In the wild, classes of great ape are split into several distinct tribes. The chimpanzee, as seen in Tanzania and the highland jungle, gorillas, as seen in the mountains of the Congo, and the elusive orangutan in the forests of Borneo. Here today, we classify a new category, the wild Riley. Wild Riley can be seen in his natural habitat, sitting in a work van, eating an entire rotisserie chicken in one sitting. He requires nothing to wash down the poultry, as the wild Riley can go several days without drinking even an ounce of water. The wild Riley licks hungrily the grease from the rotisserie chicken, not seeming to notice the dried paint or drywall thinset or silicone caulk caked to his fingers, instead ignoring it to savor one last bit of greasy rotisserie flavor. Nomadic by nature, the wild Riley can travel hundreds of miles in a day, sometimes simply to do 5 minutes of work, patching a tiny nail hole in an angry old woman's roof.
I did that like yesterday.
He passes his time during the long trek, listening to podcasts, typically of himself talking, as he enjoys the sound of his own voice, perhaps more than any other creature in the animal kingdom. Here now, a brief and rare glimpse at the sound of the wild Riley in his natural habitat.
Balls and wieners, peanut genie, driving around, talking about balls.
Truly a magnificent creature. Join us in this week's Delete Everything podcast as we look further into the life of the wild Riley and the other primates who share the wild with him, as well as those with the bravery to spend their time studying these delicate and beautiful creatures.
Peanut genie.
Welcome back, everybody, to Delete Everything Podcast, our peaceful enclave of great apes living in the beautiful hills and valleys, you know, drinking from the rivers of peace and tranquility, and bedding down with our mates for the night, sometimes beating and eating our rivals' children, but for the most part, we're cool, we're good, and we're happy. You guys, the ignorant, stupid, money-hungry poachers, welcome back. I am your host, Bubbles, and with me as ever is my co-host,
Amy, good gorilla. Amy gives snack. Good gorilla.
Amy Dexter Bowen, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm Riley Dexter Bowen.
Like we always say, if you are listening and you like this podcast, please take a moment, give us 5 stars, give us a review on whatever you're listening to. If you're on Spotify, they don't allow reviews, but they do let you do comments on the individual episodes, and we like those, and we talk back. We say things back to you. So do that. It helps us out a whole bunch on the business end of this as we get bigger and bigger and get more and more listeners. These are the things that help us sort of
as our power grows.
Yeah, it helps us make a little bit of money. So we you know, we're not here for the money specifically, but if we can get money, that's nice.
I'm gonna blow it on drugs.
We are also on YouTube, audio format mostly. I think we might have 1 or 2 videos on our YouTube, so you can listen there, and that certainly allows you to review and rate us. We also have an email address that we periodically get. You know, people will send us, you know, what's topics? That's the word. Topics of things that they, you know, if there's something you think that we should cover, if there's something you think that maybe we haven't thought about, because we have an extensive list of things to cover, but it's possible we haven't thought about the thing that you're thinking about. So send us an email. It's deleteeverythingpodcast@gmail.com. You can send us a message there. We'll respond to that too. You can just tell us how your day's going if you really want. If you're bored, need somebody to talk to, send us an email. We have Patreon too. And listen, I know it's kind of a hard sell. I'm not asking anybody who's like, struggling to pay the bills to join our Patreon. If you ain't got it, don't do it. Like buy groceries instead. But
I better not find out you've been tithing at church. Okay?
Exactly.
You've been doing the tithe, but not contributing to our Patreon.
Yeah, you get nothing back for tithing other than, I guess, maybe a sense that maybe you'll go to the good place when you die. But I'll tell you what you get if you join our Patreon. You get a back catalog of a whole bunch of bonus episodes, some video episodes, some audio episodes, some really like just unedited, untethered, unhinged nonsense. And it's a little more topical typically. Most of what we do
typically
topical.
Typically topical.
Yeah, most of what we do here is sort of older history, stuff that's not.
This is our collegiate level thesis based educational podcast where we're serious adults. And we try and educate people on serious topics.
We tend to sort of maybe kind of self-edit on these in terms of what we do and don't say. The Patreon's a different story. The Patreon's just record and boogie, baby.
Yeah, I honestly I can't even tell you what to expect on that thing.
I don't know what to expect when we hit record because we tend to start on a topic, and then we almost 100% of the time immediately stray from that.
We just
topic.
recorded 2 Patreons. I can't remember either of them. Fugue State.
Mostly when we record, it's a Fugue State. But anyway, that's that. So today we're going to be talking about the Trimates.
The Trimates.
The Trimates. How was your week, bud?
My week has been awful. I've just been working constantly. I'm exhausted, and also doing the research for this episode, which is mine because it is my birthday topic.
That's right. This is coming out on your birthday, on your actual birthday,
yeah.
Right? Yeah, and also on Memorial Day.
My birthday is the 25th, so Memorial Day is the 26th. So it'll be the day after my birthday.
The day after your birthday.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be 37. I've lived 37 years.
Why'd you throw your arms up like that?
I wanted you to.
I've lived 37 years.
That's too long.
What do you want from me?
I want to be
37.
I want to say I lived 37 years, and you'd be like, in a row?
I mean, if it's not, will you tell me specifically what happened?
Do you not get this
wild.
joke?
No.
No, try not to suck any dick on your way through the parking lot.
Oh my god!
Come on.
Oh, it's 37 dicks, wasn't
37 dicks.
That's right. Wow.
Shout out to Kevin Smith.
Yep.
So the Trimates, I cannot believe I'm about to fucking go right from Kevin Smith dick joke into talking about this topic.
Why the fuck not? It's
Okay.
not the craziest thing we've done.
So anybody that knows me very well knows that I am a bit of an ape enthusiast. When I was younger, I really wanted to be a primatologist.
I've seen you go ape shit plenty of times.
Hey.
Ew.
I just have like an abiding love and respect for like the great apes of the earth, and I always have. But a lot of this comes from like my childhood hero, like my big hero that I think about and admire the most of like anyone on earth is Jane Goodall.
Yep.
Famed chimpanzee researcher, primatologist.
I'm familiar with her.
Anthropologist.
Seemed like a sweet lady.
Very sweet lady. I've met her in person.
Yeah.
She's an absolute delight. I have her tattooed on my chest.
I know this too.
It's not a joke or an exaggeration.
I know. I remember when you got it.
Yeah, and it's one of my favorite tattoos.
It's a cool tattoo.
Yeah. The legend, I guess, kind of in my life is that my mother was a docent at the Detroit Zoo when she was pregnant with me and attended a lecture put on by Dr. Jane Goodall.
What's a docent, Riley?
A docent is a zoo or museum worker that's responsible for catering to artifacts and exhibits.
Thanks.
Yes.
I don't want people to like they're driving, listening to this podcast, and like trying to type in docent.
Well, I mean, like,
into
so
their phone
at a zoo, a docent would be somebody who would like feed animals
Right.
or give informational tours or
Support staff.
in
Yeah.
general. But yeah, my mother was working there when Jane Goodall came through and gave like a big presentation.
Mhm.
So like the legend in my life is that I heard Jane Goodall as like a baby in her stomach.
Cool.
And since I've been little, like I've read all of her books and all this stuff.
Huh.
But it's not just her I want to focus on because she is a fascinating character in
Yes.
general. But she was a part of a program that didn't really have its own title until fairly recently, what is now being called the Trimates, which is 3 women who were put in different parts of the world to study individual types of great ape, placed there by the famed British African paleontologist Louis Leakey.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that person.
Okay, Louis Leakey. His name was Louis Seymour Bazett Leakey.
Bazett.
Bazett, B-A-Z-E-T-T.
What is that? What is the etymology
I
of that
haven't
name?
the slightest idea.
Where was he from?
He was born in Kenya.
Oh, okay.
He was British. He was born in Kenya.
Okay.
So he was born in 1903, August 1903.
What were the British doing in that area of the world?
We'll
Riley?
talk about that on a different issue. There's a whole nother episode coming up where we're talking about why the British were in Kenya in 1903.
Yes, Jesus.
But he lived from 1903 to 1972. He was a Kenyan British paleoanthropologist and archaeologist whose work was important in demonstrating that humans evolved in Africa, particularly through discoveries made at this place called Olduvai Gorge.
Okay.
So Louis Leakey's big supposition in finding out the roots of human existence was that we evolved from the great apes. At the very least, we shared a common ancestor.
Common ancestor, yeah.
But more likely, mind you, this is an area of study in the early 1900s that was not particularly advanced.
Right.
And up until...
It wasn't taken very well by European society either.
No. When the idea of man evolving from ape was introduced, some people got fucking murdered over it.
Yeah.
Like, Charles Darwin never even lightly mentioned that man evolved from ape. It was not his interest. That was not Darwin's shit at all.
No, he
came up with an overarching thematic,
yes,
struggle of species.
It was born from the origin of species.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the origin of species, when it was taken in context, could be applied easily to humans, and a lot of people were like, well, perhaps we have evolved from an ape.
Yeah.
And it stands to reason.
I mean, we're like 99% genetically identical.
Yeah, 98, 99, depending on
I think
who
it's
you talk to.
99 point something.
Yeah, so our genetics are very, very close to gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, simiangs, and some gibbons.
Really?
Yeah, there's some gibbony shit going on.
Really?
There. Yes,
Those
the
are
eyes,
little guys.
the front-facing eyes.
Okay.
Right. So Louis Leakey's big swing was that we probably evolved from one of the great apes. He just didn't know which. He's finding all of this evidence of, like different types of human evolution through his archaeological digs.
I think bonobos is the most genetically similar.
That would make a lot of sense, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I think bonobos is the most genetically similar.
So Leakey spent his whole life, like, trying to figure out the origin of the human species.
Okay.
Right? In the early 60s, he started implementing workers to actually study apes and try and find similarities between human cultures, human activities, family groups, and what the apes do.
Okay.
Right? He was also, I don't know how to say this, wrong in a lot of ways. Like, in early forms of anthropological sciences, there's a lot of contention around what you can and cannot say about human evolution, right? Louis Leakey pushed like that we have to have evolved. So, he didn't really know where to place that, but his theory was that we probably evolved from chimpanzees or gorillas.
Well, a common ancestor, I think, is
his opinion.
Is that it was
a pretty direct evolution from.
That doesn't make sense, but okay.
Why doesn't it make sense?
Because naturally, they would have evolved as well.
Would they have? Because humans separating themselves from that common ancestor of like a chimpanzee, say, and moving into a different area would have evolved in a different place.
But there aren't a lot of species that have not evolved over hundreds of thousands, millions of years. There are very few species that have remained unchanged. Crocodiles stand out as one of them.
Okay.
I think some species of sharks. There aren't a lot of like holdouts that didn't evolve at all.
Okay.
As far as fossil remains go.
So just think about it like this. When you're a human being who's been raised in human society, right? And you're looking at the natural world in the early 1900s, you don't have a whole fuckload of shit to fall back on. Essentially, dinosaurs were discovered less than 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're looking at stuff like, okay, we came from somewhere. What could it be? And you look into the jungle and you're like, well, that looks like a me.
Looks like, acts like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, maybe we come from that.
Yeah.
You know, and of course, he's seeing different evolutionary stages of...
There's a general sadness in the eyes that reminds me of me.
There's a lot of Yorking it. There's like just constant masturbation.
A lot of putting my finger in my butt and smelling it immediately afterwards.
Yeah, it's a lot of that.
That's the thing I do.
Chimpanzees known to watch television. Big television fans.
Good for them.
I don't know how they did that in the 1920s.
BJ and the Bear. Didn't have a bear in it at all, which was
no.
weird.
It was,
So
well...
weird. Was the monkey supposed to be a bear?
I guess the monkey was named Bear, but I always kind of like assumed that BJ was the bear. If you get my drift, big trucker, kind of hairy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
In the gay community.
Yes,
I got you.
I think he was porking the monkey.
Interesting fact. Are you familiar with the band Minus the Bear?
Yes, I am.
Do you know that the name of their band came from one of the band members going out on a date? And when he got back, there was, the other guys were like, "Hey, how was your date?" Whatever, and he was like, "It was like BJ and the Bear minus the bear."
That's fucking dumb, but it's funny.
It is funny.
So anyway, like Louis Leakey's doing all these archaeological digs in Africa, coming up with a lot of evidence of human evolution, humans changing a lot, not finding too much to indicate that chimpanzees and gorillas have evolved over time, but also not particularly finding that many fucking chimpanzee and gorilla fossils.
Okay.
More human, because he's digging in predominantly human occupied areas.
Yeah, where there were settlements.
Chimpanzees and gorillas would not be.
Avoid,
yeah,
actually.
Exactly. So that's pretty much where his brain is at.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's looking at a way to study these apes and find their similarities and at least get like a scientific like sitting place.
Okay.
Right? I mean, like, it should be pointed out that his son in the future, a guy named Richard Leakey, is the one who introduces the concept of man splitting off from old world monkeys with a common ancestor. Yeah,
right.
So like where Richard Leakey or Louis Leakey starts,
which I think is kind of the agreed upon.
That's where we're at now. Yeah, that's what we kind of consensusly.
Which lets people, there's this constant argument of like, well, where's the missing link? And it's like, well, how many things can you put in between? And keep asking for the missing link.
That idea.
We keep finding more humanoid.
The missing link concept is part of that attachment to humans evolving from apes like chimpanzees. Right. There is no missing link because we evolved on a divergent evolutionary path from old world monkeys, bajillion years ago.
And as you look at old humanoid species, there is a very like, that sort of diagram that goes from ape to, and it just slowly like gets more and more humanoid as you go down.
Your classic.
Yeah. We only recently, I mean, even like in the last 5 years or so, we found a new classification, a new humanoid species. I believe we found, I can't remember where, fossil remains of like an unclassified humanoid. So I mean,
we're finding shit like that all the time.
Yeah, and you have to look at it from once that divergence happened with some of these much older fossil remains of humanoids, right? You can't tell. One of the biggest differences between great apes and humans right now, again, like I said, 99% genetically similar.
Pants.
One of the big differences,
unless you put pants on an ape and give it a cigarette, then it's essentially just a person.
Then then you're like,
I can see that similarity. Yeah. That's it.
Give him a briefcase, tell him to go put in a job application. Yeah.
Maybe a banana that he can use as a phone for a second. And then eat the banana. Yeah.
Keeping the banana phone.
Smoking a cigarette, talking on the banana phone.
Listen, one of the biggest differences is hair. And you can't tell how hairy or not hairy a fossil remain was when it was alive. You know what I mean?
There's some indications as to that, but it's really hard.
It's guesswork. It's mostly guesswork. So that's the thing is like, as you reconstruct some of these older humanoid remains, if you were to reconstruct them in a way where you gave them sort of humanoid features and no body hair and things like that, then they don't look like they are a direct descendant from apes, right? But if you make them real hairy and give them some ape-like features, suddenly it's not that difficult to imagine. And also, in a time where, some of these humanoid species would be more nomadic than others, as they venture further and further out and away into different climates and different regions, they evolve differently.
Some of the stuff that Richard Leakey supposes in his book, I don't have his information
okay.
pulled up right now, but it's a book I read when I was younger.
Mhm.
When I was a kid, my father and I got in a big debate because my father was a fucking dickhead, but he was also a
It's
very
been a long time since you shit on your dad on the podcast.
yeah. I'm glad he's dead, but like he was my dad sucked.
Boy.
My dad sucked, but he was also a really really intelligent guy,
Uh-huh.
and I have a bunch of books that I inherited from him.
Okay.
He wasn't as smart as my mom. If you're listening, Mom. But
Good catch.
he and I got in this big
catch.
debate because I was this like super pro evolutionarist, kind of like punk dickhead when I was in like middle school, and I kept getting in all these theological
Was
debates.
it the origin of humankind?
There you go. Yeah, Richard
Or
Leakey.
just origins?
Richard Leakey, Origin of Humankind, or is it just Origins? I don't know.
Both.
Either or. He's going to talk about the same things.
Okay.
Yes, when you find like an anthropologist that studied their whole life on one subject, they tend to write multiple books about it.
Yeah.
So my dad and I had this debate where
Origins Reconsidered in 1992, The Origin of Humankind in 1994, and The Sixth Extinction in 1995.
I'll bet you it was that first one.
Origins Reconsidered, 92?
Sounds right.
Okay.
Anyway, so like my dad and I got in this kind of heated debate
Mhm.
about evolution because I was like, no, obviously man evolved from the ape. And he's trying to tell me like, no, you fucking idiot kid. You don't know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
We evolved from like a separate kind of old world. Like, we have a divergent lineage.
An
And
elder primate.
Yeah, and I was like, well, I was just being obtuse, and he yelled at me about like, well, if you read the work of Richard Leakey, you'll see that fucking moving out of the jungle into the tall grass, different forms of ape would learn to be bipedal by
Sure.
standing on their legs to look out over
To see, yeah.
to see if there were any predators. You dumb fuck. Yeah, but like Richard Leakey's bit in,
I think I would have gotten along with your dad.
he was a lot of people liked him. I didn't.
I would have probably behind his back been like, this guy's a fucking
Yeah,
nightmare.
he fucking
But
sucks. He reeks of cigarettes. But anyway, not talking about apes, you know what I'm saying? But so like one of Richard Leakey's things is that when we diverged from that sort of old world monkey,
uh-huh.
it created a plethora of different humanoid, like human evolution based steps, right? Like
Right.
your Homo erectus, Homo habilis, so on and so forth. That went in different directions. Some coming out of like the cradle of Africa,
Right.
and then some moving into the plains and learning to be bipedal by looking out over grass. Some
What episode-
living in more coastal areas. Some going to even deeper jungles, like fucking into Indonesia and changing body types completely.
What episode was it recently when we talked about Darwin?
I don't know about
We talked
Darwin.
about Darwin's Origin of Species because I made the point that if you look at most scientists agree that as far as evolution goes, things sort of stay mostly stagnant for a period of several hundreds of thousands,
Right,
if not
right.
million plus years.
Mhm.
And then these evolutions sort of explode in and I say short time span, that short time span is just several small, like micro evolutions over several hundreds of thousands of years.
Right.
But I can't remember which episode it was.
We were talking
It
about
was the Bible.
Yeah.
It was the Bible. Yeah.
We were talking about we talk about the uncanny valley in that episode? Have we covered the uncanny valley on the podcast?
I don't know.
One of the things about human evolution that is creepy, but is definitely still inside. Like, okay, so there's a whole thing that has to do with like DreamWorks animation. It sounds weird, but like when Shrek came out,
Okay.
or when the movie like Mars Needs Moms came out,
Uh-huh.
there were these like really intense pushes to get the most realistic CGI you could get into these cartoons. Things like
Okay.
Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within, and shit came out, and it was all like very realistic animation, but it was creeping people out and making people really uncomfortable.
That
It
makes
was-
sense.
It was like a whole thing. Like people were boycotting Shrek because they were like, "This fucking is making me nauseous to look at." But it turns out that,
Just a fucking cartoon ogre.
dude, I'm dead
that
serious.
looks
But
too
it wasn't. It was
human.
never Shrek. It was like Princess Fiona, like in her human form,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it's like that looks too close to a person without actually being a person for it to be comfortable, and it was making people have like a really visceral reaction.
Interesting. I never knew about this.
There's another movie called Mars Needs Moms.
I remember that
Yeah,
one.
that is all very like tried to be hyper realistic, but it was freaking people out because the faces on these human characters are so close to being like a real person's face, but just off enough that it was causing this really intense kind of dislike. And it turns out that it's because of a genetic holdover from human evolution that they call the uncanny valley. That is a fight or flight response to things that look like humans but aren't.
Oh.
Right? So like all these different divergent types of humanoid.
I remember when did the first Shrek movie come out?
2000?
That makes sense because like late high school, early college, I had probably for like 5 years a subscription to Popular Science magazine. And I remember reading an article in Popular Science where they were talking about how the computer modeling had gotten so good, like the CGI had gotten so good, that they were talking about the future of motion pictures where there would be CGI actors that you would see in several different movies, several different, and this would be sort of like
they've been talking about
just
that for a long time.
Character that existed in code.
Yeah, and now we're actually, with the advent of AI, we're actually kind of right at the cusp of that. And I think more importantly than anything, that uncanny valley feeling is really prevalent right now. Like I know I was just talking to you.
Yeah, I think all this shit is like, I mean, obviously I'm guessing that you didn't have any fucking weird reticence to seeing these CGI. All this
actually,
shit.
Interesting fact.
Did you?
Because my dad was a traditional animator, I already had an ingrained dislike of CGI. Like when I was a kid, I wouldn't watch any of that
but
shit.
not in reference to a fight or flight mechanism.
No,
just
I mean, whatever.
Just a this ain't right sort of thing.
I've only ever been watching cartoons, so
and so that's the thing that's weird to me is like I feel like a lot of these things are just it's the same people who are like we can't be descended from monkeys. It's that same bullshit. It's just this weird ingrained superiority that's like anti-science.
I think what you're positing is a little separate from what I'm positing, because I'm saying that this is just a part of your makeup. You can't quite if you see like an AI thing on social media or whatever, and for a second you think it's real and you realize it's not, don't you get this like ugh?
I'm mostly annoyed that it wasted my time more than anything else.
It doesn't have to be like a whole like I'm enraged, but just a little like dislike, just ugh.
Probably,
But
again, like I said, I think a lot of that has to do with just now I wasted my time on this dumb bullshit.
Right. Well, this uncanny valley thing is it's real.
Okay, well, I'm not doubting it.
It has a lot of it, like a lot of the roots of racism are based on this.
That's more what I'm saying.
When there were all these different types of humanoid living around the world, using tools, creating shelters, hunting, things like that.
Yeah,
we fought viciously. Like
that. I mean, that exists in the great ape world now.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things,
tribes of chimpanzees attacking other tribes of chimpanzees.
One of the things that has made
them
Homo sapiens such a successful species is not just that we are able to like adapt into different territories and stuff. Is that we have ruthlessly hunted down other humanoids living in those areas.
Absolutely.
and killed them.
I mean,
there are a lot of like people that still have like Neanderthal blood and things like that. Yeah, but there's like an ingrained sort of like dislike for separatism in general.
Sure.
Which has leaned pretty heavily into poaching of great apes, actually, like throughout the world.
Stands to reason.
Yeah,
and it also makes up a lot of the basis of the pervasive racism that
It's just that you see something very close to you that is not you.
That is other, yeah.
Yeah, and it creates a reaction.
Right.
But I mean, you can see that in your basic scary stories, horror stories, slasher movies, shit like that. That's the reason why the slasher in the scary movie is always wearing some fucking weird mask or something. Yeah. You're like, oh, that's not like me. That's, like Hannibal Lecter's scary, but he's not a fucking big guy in a hockey mask, Like, you can see that and be like, oh, he is like me, he's scary. But then you see the other one, you're like, oh, that's not a me.
Yeah,
that's not a me at all.
Be more worried about the Hannibal Lecter character.
As well you should, but that's the character that can go about, unimpeded.
That's what takes it from horror to psychological thriller.
Yeah, exactly. So, in any case...
That is weird. I've never thought about that.
Right?
That is literally the deviation. That's the variance there, is that
you can't tell, if they're
psychological
dangerous.
Thriller is, holy shit, this could really happen.
Yeah.
Horror movie is like, guy in a jumpsuit with a machete and a hockey mask, whatever.
There's actually this really kind of a cool caveman...
punching guys' heads off.
It's cool kind of a caveman scary movie. I can't remember the name of it that I saw last year that, like, turned out to be based on this exact concept. Like, it's like these Homo sapiens...
Encino Man.
Yeah, it was Encino Man. Yeah,
Brendan
Fraser.
Pauly Shore.
I knew there was something off about him. No, it was something. It was like
the Weasel, man.
These cavemen were trying to survive in a new land, and they were being hunted by something in the woods that was real scary. And it turns out it was like Neanderthals.
It was man.
It was Neanderthals. So it's like it shows this whole conflict. It was fucking cool.
And then the Neanderthals died out because
humans killed them and took their caves. Yeah,
and refused to breed with them. That's a big thing. So there is still, especially in Nordic countries, obviously where
makes
Neanderthals.
Me feel bad. I'd have fucked the Neanderthal.
And a big old forehead ass bitch.
Might even be said that I have banged a Neanderthal or two in my day, or maybe those ladies have. I do have a pretty fucking big head.
There are people who still have like Neanderthal DNA.
Yeah, that's
which
all
is
over
like
the place,
a thing. Yeah, mostly in like the Nordic
and that's
countries.
the thing when you're thinking about those like humanoids or anthropoidal characters all over the place. We were so close that we had the capability to interbreed.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the leading theories though is that part of the reason why Neanderthals died out is that that next iteration, that next evolution of hominid, right? That's right. Yeah.
Anthropoid, humanoid, hominid.
Yeah. Was like, no, you big forehead, muscly fuck. I don't want to fuck you.
Gross.
And then literally, that's like a leading theory for why they died out is that they were like, no, you look weird. I'm not fucking you.
Fucking gap tooth ass, big forehead, fucking.
And so the population
ass.
just slowly declined, and for I guess a few of them were down to fuck because there's still some Neanderthal DNA floating around out there. But yeah, that's a theory. They were not fuckable.
I wouldn't say they were not fuckable.
Hairy knuckled, big forehead,
less successful,
hunchback ass, muscly, big calf ass.
Well, big dicks, great big old Neanderthal dicks.
That might have been part of it too. That dick's too big. That
Neanderthal,
vagina is too.
Neanderthal brother too buku.
What? That Neanderthal woman is 6'3". I'm 5'4". Yeah. This little dick isn't going to do anything in there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that. Whatever. Essentially, the idea is that all these anthropoids kind of hunted each other.
For sure.
Yeah, because even now, if you're in the woods and you see something that looks like a person but isn't a person, you're gonna get freaked out.
I remember reading a book a long time ago where, and this was a fictional novel, so I'm not sure how accurate it was, but it was the main character was like a hitman come out of retirement. It was a really good book called Beat the Reaper. But one of the things that he did when he was like moving around in the dark is keeping his head down because of something where like if you see the eyes of another, I guess, animal, creature, whatever, like your neurons fire off in your brain a lot more than if you just see a random movement.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
And I'm not sure how accurate it was, but yeah, like
it makes sense.
It made sense. It made sense when I read it.
Right. So, okay, all this to say...
Yes, go on. We have an episode to do.
Yeah, we got plenty of time. I've still got a half hour to talk about all these ladies. Okay. A piece. So this whole sort of visceral reaction was something that Louis Leakey wanted to avoid in doing research. His idea was if he wanted to get a closer look at these apes, it was going to have to be a very scientific approach, very hands-off approach. He couldn't get invested in it because he had other things going on.
Sure.
So he needed dedicated researchers. But at the same time that he wanted this scientific sort of like distance and emotional sort of detachment, and so don't get involved with the apes. Just fucking get out there, study them.
Right.
He wanted that, but he also wanted someone that could connect with them enough that could see them as thinking like people, essentially. Right. So he's
like, I need some ladies.
Exactly. So he chose ladies.
Because they're well respected in the scientific community.
Yeah. Particularly well in 1960.
Oh my God.
So his theory was, and
they just got to vote. Now it's time for them to be scientists.
This theory, and I gotta say, I think that it sounds sexist, but also makes a lot of fucking sense, is that if you were going to get somebody who had the patience to try and understand a non-verbal humanoid creature, it would be a woman.
I would agree.
Right? Because, as like mothers, that's a lot of the shit.
I feel like women have a much higher capacity for compassion in general than men do.
Yeah, I would agree with that for the most part.
Yeah.
There was a second.
Fight me if you disagree.
There was kind of a secondary motive wherein Louis Leakey wanted to fuck them too.
Yeah.
Because he was a bit of a creep. But, men of the time.
The apes or the scientists?
I mean...
I'm okay.
Yeah, he specifically made a pass at all of these researchers as he tried to get them out there. And you know what?
Doesn't surprise me.
Obviously, the story is that they didn't accept, but I mean, they did get into the positions he was offering. And I'm not making a supposition there. I'm saying pretty specifically,
I don't like it.
If Dr. Goodall banged this scientist to get a position where she could become the foremost fucking chimpanzee expert in the history of the world, I mean, whatever.
Ends justify the means, I suppose.
That doesn't bother me at all.
It doesn't need to bother you. It's bothered fucking. I think it would bother a lot of people.
But she is
would be upset about that being a prerequisite for the job,
right?
Or as
you know how
as Leakey would call it, a perquisite.
Oh, well, you know how men in power have operated historically.
Also, still, yes,
it does seem very in line with that sort of behavior.
And in the 60s, you could get away with it.
Right, exactly,
You want to go out with the monkeys.
The plus Jane Goodall was...
time for little suckies.
Jane Goodall was a non-college educated woman working for him as a secretary before she was shipped out, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
did not know
another take that Louis Leakey had was that people with less formal scientific training would be able to pick up on things that detached scientists wouldn't be able to pick up on.
Okay.
So
I don't know how I feel about that or how much I agree with that, but sure.
The first of these, well, yeah, that's the experiment, right?
It worked out.
It did, but with the same qualms that you have, there are many kinks and foibles that are attached to this method of investigation.
Sure.
I will get into it in just a second. But the first person that
BJ seemed to do pretty well with the bear. I don't think he was college educated.
No, I don't think so.
The bear
Maybe
loved
he was. I don't know.
riding
He had
that big
Class
rig.
A. So
you know how hard it is to get a CDL nowadays.
The first of the three ladies that Dr.
I think it's harder to get a CDL or a monkey license.
You need a license for a monkey?
100%.
Or as a monkey, do you think it's harder to get a license?
Or get a monkey driver's license. They didn't show those episodes where the bear was driving the big rig.
A monkey driver's license. And smoking a cigarette with a hat. Honking the horn. The banana
we'll switch
phone,
off at the Lowe's,
banana
bear.
phone in the car rings.
His CB is just a banana. Okay, go on.
Oh, okay. So
hell.
The first of the three ladies that Louis Leakey put in these different positions was Dame Jane Morris Goodall, born Valerie Jane Morris Goodall, 3rd of April, 1934. Formerly Baroness Jane Van Lawick Goodall.
Oh, she was a baroness.
Yes, well, she started out as a non-college educated secretary.
Don't need a degree if you're a baroness.
She wasn't born a baroness.
Oh, I thought you said she was.
No, she was born.
Oh, you said formerly. I assume
formerly.
I assume she was born a
so
baroness.
she was born a regular old English lady. Eventually becomes a baroness and then becomes a dame.
Which means that's like a female knight,
like
right?
a female knight, exactly. Yeah. She's considered she's an English zoologist, primatologist, and anthropologist. She's considered the world's foremost expert on chimpanzees after 60 years studying the social and family interactions of wild chimpanzees. Goodall first went to the Gombe Stream National Park in Tanzania to observe the chimpanzees in 1960.
Okay.
Right. She also founded the Jane Goodall Institute, which is the largest and most
Still
prolific chimpanzee rescue, rehabilitation, and research
still kicking ass today.
on Earth. Yeah. She's a United Nations Messenger of Peace and an honorary member of the World Future Council. I don't know what the fuck that is, but
I don't know what that is either.
So I could go through her entire life.
Give me her entire CV. I'm kidding.
That's it. That's just it. There's the CV. She was a person, and then she did this.
Okay.
She was born in Hampstead, London.
That's not the impressive part about her.
Her dad left when she was 16. She was close with her mom. She was a big fan of Tarzan books. She always dreamed of dealing with apes in Africa.
Okay.
It's something she says. Everybody always dreams. But that's one of the things that
we've talked about.
As a kid.
We've talked about being able to write your own legend.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So in context, she was a person. Just a person. Yeah, she liked I liked the Tarzan books a lot. She had
Who the fuck didn't?
There's this legend that she has where she has this pet or not pet, a stuffed monkey that she grew up with named Jubilee that she's always had. She still has to this day.
From the X-Men.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't really count any of that shit. It seems like she was a pretty normal person, and this is the legend that's now been printed and she still adheres to.
Okay.
Because it's part of the legend that gets her funding. It gets, that she can...
She's dead now, right?
No, she's still left.
She's still
alive?
alive?
Yeah, she's still left. Yeah.
How old is she?
I mean, she was born in... What did we say here? She was born in 1934.
Oh, wow.
So
she's 91.
91. But yeah, so like the legend that's been printed about her has her as this saintly, all-around, just benevolent, kind, researching lady. And I don't think any of that's incorrect.
From everything that I've seen, at least public face-wise, yes.
I've met her twice.
Uh-huh.
She seemed absolutely lovely.
Once was in utero?
Yeah.
Are you counting that as once?
No. So okay. So no, I've been to 2 presentations of hers.
Okay.
One was in New York City. One was in Detroit when I was younger.
Okay.
My mom tells the story of the presentation because my mom worked at the Detroit Science Center when I saw Jane Goodall for the first time.
Okay.
And she tells the story of how I was in the presentation watching like the movie that they had going on in the IMAX or whatever. And Dr. Goodall came out to walk back to her hotel for a few minutes and have lunch and take a nap and come back, right? There's a frail little old lady, and she says hi to my mom or whatever, and then she's walking out, and these 2 brusque ladies like rush in past her, and they come like, "We're here to see Dr. Jane Goodall. Wow, we're such a big fan." My mom's like, "Oh, you just missed her. She just walked out that way." And this is in downtown Detroit.
Okay.
They're like, "She's just going to walk out there?" And my mom's like, pretty sure that she went through
lived in the woods in Africa, and
she lived in Tanzania during the Civil War. I don't think she's fucking afraid of walking 3 blocks in downtown Detroit.
As a little old lady who probably like, who's gonna fuck with?
Yeah, but there's the thing. She is this sort of revered elder stateswoman of proprietary and like kindness and all this shit. She also has been privy to some pretty fucking scary shit. She lived in the jungle with chimpanzees for a decade.
It's crazy.
Right? Like, and it's not just let me get into it. Okay. So she'd always been drawn to animals, stuff like that. She started working with Louis Leakey as a secretary. He had the idea to put her out in Gombe as a researcher because she was interested. She was patient. And frankly, not bad looking, and that sort of publicity is good for science programs.
Sure.
A lot of the stuff that got Jane and these other ladies out in the field is very celebrity status stuff.
Right.
It's like, hey, Louis Leakey's like, I'm famous.
Right.
Look at these broads I'm putting out there. They'll be famous too. Look, this is a good looking broad.
Yeah.
Look at her, she out playing with the monkeys.
Boy, oh boy.
Yeah. So, so Dr. Goodall, at the time not a doctor, goes out there with no experience, like goes out her first trip out there with like her mother, right? And she camps out there. It takes her over a year to get close to chimpanzees, and she eventually like invents this way of researching apes in the wild that no one had ever really thought about, and that way just so happened to be chilling out.
Just chilling with monkeys.
Chilling with monkeys, man.
Chilling with chimps, baby.
And I should get mad that we're calling them monkeys because they're great apes, but I mean it's fine. It's with shorthand. Shorthand.
Chilling with chimps.
Yeah. So she would every day go out and sit and watch them. And every day one would notice, maybe do a display to try and scare her off. And she just kind of like, whoa, easy, not look them in the eye. And then little by little, they'd be a little closer. They'd realize she wasn't a threat.
Right.
Over the course of a year, eventually, like, they're coming up to like try and like play with her and stuff. And she's still just kind of, we're just, observing. She's having a little bit of trouble getting real close into the family groups, but she's studying the way that they're working and noticing a lot of very human traits.
Right.
She's the one who discovers that chimps have the use of tools. But
right. Yep.
But the kind of tool usage they have is more object modification that's interesting. Because a lot of different animals will use a stick for something. Or like otters will use a rock to break open a shell. Right. But modifying an object to use as a tool is something unique. Specifically to humans, but also now, like, she finds the great apes.
Right.
Like, they'll strip sticks to make better pokey things to get termites with. They'll use pieces of wood as hammers, but they'll, like, shape them. There's a whole thing. She notices all this stuff. She notices the familial groups. She notices just the human angles of all of these different chimps.
Right. She's looking at them as...
Yeah, exactly. And then...
potentially a link to our past.
Exactly.
As opposed to just... chimps in the woods.
Yeah, it's that kind of empathy hadn't been exhibited in scientific study before. She writes this great book. It's called In the Shadow of Man. Fantastic book. I got an original copy at home.
Okay.
She talks about getting into this family in the Gombe Reserve, and she's got like a handful of like her favorite chimps. So there's like David Greybeard is like this, like
I
the
actually know
leader.
that name.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
funny.
This is very famous stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's this romantic sort of adventure story,
Yeah.
right? Also lightly sanitized usually for the basic, casual observer. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of like sexual assault and stuff like that goes on in chimp cultures.
Yeah.
She's the one who pointed out that they would fucking kill their rival males' kids, or even at some points, she is the one who discovered that chimps were omnivorous and not just vegetarian, that they would catch and eat like small deer, birds, eat monkeys, even other chimpanzees.
Baby monkeys.
Yeah, exactly.
Baby chimps.
She discovered all this stuff about them. And at one point, the big breakthrough in her research was she started giving them food.
Okay.
Which is massive breach in protocol.
Yeah, I was going to say that's kind of a no-no.
It's like there are scientists still to this day that knowing that she gave bananas to wild chimps, which are not native to that part of Africa anyway. It's just, that is I read a bunch of Tarzans when I was a little girl side of her.
Right.
I was like, I mean, bananas probably,
they
right?
love bananas.
Yeah, monkeys love bananas. Everyone knows monkeys love bananas. But turns out they went bananas for bananas. And her feeding them
still do.
Her feeding them gained the trust of this group to the point that she became really well ingrained.
Right, but then it also becomes a whole dependence.
It's
dependence. How much are they going to depend on you for
exactly,
food?
Exactly.
You kind of.
It's a whole thing, and she even recognized that and separated herself from the
you're fucking with the natural order a little bit.
But she maintained this relationship with this one family in the Gombe Reserve forever. And I love her story, and I'm a huge, huge fan of hers. I think that it is a bit sanitized all around.
I would almost guarantee it is.
Yeah, 110%. I think specifically, like, one thing that people don't talk about very much is that kind of freaked people out a lot was what was termed is in 1974, she started noticing the splintering of the Gombe groups. And a very famous event in anthropology called the Gombe Chimpanzee War happened.
Yeah.
Where she watched, like, chimps that she had now known for well over a decade. She had seen grow.
Like mobilized
to become an army and fight amongst each other in a brutal, horrifying battle. And, like, that shit must have been insane, not just to watch, but to, like, watch your friends that you've been...
I was going to say, I feel like even not knowing any of them, if you just dropped me right now in the middle of it, I'd be like
holy fuck.
Holy
But then when you're watching,
shit.
like, I watched that baby grow up into this, like, primate leader.
And now he's ripping the jaw off of another
exactly.
chimp.
Beating an old friend of mine to death, like
Jesus.
And also, like, that sort of bloodlust that she's watching is terrifying because she knows she's not safe in it. But Jane Goodall, historically,
it would certainly make you rethink.
She has been known always as, like, kind of a walk into danger sort of person. There are several occasions in varying civil wars, like human civil wars, that happened around Gombe and Tanzania and Lake Victoria that she would have to get kind of involved with, and be like, listen, we're independent researchers, please don't slaughter us in your pursuit for justice or whatever.
Right.
But, like, researchers she worked with were killed by, revolutionary soldiers.
Right. That's crazy.
Yeah, she at one point actually imported out, like, dozens of chimpanzees out of a particular refuge because it was being burned during a civil war. And
Jesus.
Like, there's this cool... All right, so there's another book called not In the Shadow of Man. Another book called Next of Kin by Roger Fouts, who dealt with another chimpanzee and taught her sign language, wherein he recounts, like, an adventure where Jane Goodall took a boat back and forth upstream importing chimpanzees from an island that was burning during a particular civil war. They were, like, shooting at her, and she's fucking boating up and down the stream, like, saving chimps. Total badass.
Yeah.
But also the most proper prim lady and the best kind of scientist mind that you're going to find. She becomes a doctor. She, gets married. She becomes a dame. All this stuff based on her own merits and her own, like, inner strength. Now, I'm not going to do much more on her because she stands by herself completely. The Jane Goodall Institute is still rocking. They just recently released a biography movie about her.
I feel like pretty much everybody knows the name, if not something about Jane Goodall.
Yeah, exactly. And she's fucking amazing, and I love her. But the next one on the list of the three is a lady named Dian Fossey. So Dian Fossey was born in 1932. She's an American primatologist and conservationist known for undertaking an extensive study of mountain gorilla groups in 1966 until her murder in 1985.
Jesus.
So if you think of Jane Goodall as kind of like the angel of this sort of undertaking, Dian Fossey would go the way of the devil of this sort of undertaking.
Okay.
She was, pretty...
Much like Bob Fosse.
Much like Bob Fosse. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not even joking. Bob Fosse, chain smoking, just getting fucked all the time, wasted, dancing jazz hands. Go see all that jazz.
Everybody knows Michael Flatley, Lord of the Dance.
Oh.
Bob Fosse, Devil of the Dance.
That's such a good joke. Oh, my God. Dian Fossey studied gorillas in the Congo daily in the mountain forests of Rwanda.
Silverbacks.
Well, not just silverback. Silverback is just one type of gorilla, but like she did have like
all the gorillas.
Yeah, mountain gorillas in general. There are multiple different types.
Sure,
it should be noted that when we're talking about all these primates, there are a lot of different types. There's a lot of different kinds of chimps, a lot of different kinds of gorillas and orangutans.
What I'm saying is not to diminish what a angry chimpanzee can do to you, because the internet exists and you've probably seen it. But a fucking gorilla, Jesus,
it is an unbelievable powerhouse for sure.
Just rip your arms right off of you.
Something very interesting about that: gorillas far more peaceful than chimpanzees.
Yeah.
Gorillas are an incredibly peaceful type. You don't really see gorilla wars, because they're independent and they know the show of strength.
There's nothing that can fuck them up
except another, a silverback gorilla. The only thing that's going to fuck that up is another silverback gorilla. Yeah. And they don't want to do that because a fight between them is going to end up in death.
It's like, how many guys that you know that are 6'4" and 300 pounds that go out to the bar and drink and stuff are just, angry, just
seething,
fucking
just looking for another
shit-starting
6'4"
maniacs.
guy.
It's always the little guy that's fucking talking shit and starting shit after he has a couple drinks. The 6'4", 300-pound guys are always the nicest dudes. Why? You don't have to worry about much. Nobody's gonna fuck with you. That's my take on it,
it's that kind of thing. If you look at a silverback gorilla, a fucking if different places, of course, but if a lion were to come across one of those, it would think twice.
100%.
That's a big motherfucker right there.
A lion would have to be starving to decide to fuck with that.
So Dian Fossey studied gorillas daily in the forests of Rwanda. She was initially encouraged to work there by...
I don't think their habitats...
They don't. They're completely different habitats. Yeah, lions would be a different country even.
Right.
But she wrote this. She was initially encouraged to undertake this by paleoanthropologist Louis Leakey.
Okay.
This is yet another hey, why don't you join my monkey lady club?
Hey, why don't you fuck me? And then
this was another meeting where he was kind of huh, and the ascribed story is the turn down. Neither here nor there. So Dian Fossey was again just sort of an enthusiast. She had college education, but it was for occupational therapy. And she was working as, I think, a medical assistant for a doctor. After living a very, very average life, she loved animals. She liked riding horses and stuff.
Okay.
She had been kind of a lonely lady, a little athletic, not outcasted, but not necessarily center of popularity or anything.
Right.
We do know that her family was a little cold to her. She had a stepdad that wouldn't even let her eat at the dinner table with them and shit.
Really?
Yeah, it was just kind of weird stuff.
What kind of fucking evil stepdad Disney movie bullshit is that?
Just weird shit like that. But she got out of that pretty quick, and she's like, I don't fucking care. I'm gonna go ride horses and fucking do my own life.
Okay.
Go to college and stuff. She was working for a doctor that took a trip out to Africa and came back and regaled her with stories, and she's like, I want to fucking do that. So she ended up going out to Africa on her own dime.
Really?
And just kind of fucking around.
This is before she knew Louis Leakey?
Yeah, she'd never met him before. Okay. She ended up meeting him at that dig site, the gorge that we talked about.
Oh, okay.
Because she was doing kind of touristy stuff.
Okay.
But it's the sort of stuff that interests her. She wants to see the gorillas. She had thought about it. She'd fucking gorillas would be cool. So she's out there to learn some things and do some things and live a cool life. Runs into Louis Leakey and his wife. They have cool conversation.
Louis Leakey had a wife?
Oh, yeah. Yes, he did. Who apparently drank quite heavily.
Well,
because he was always out fucking some assistant.
You'd have to.
Not to downplay his contributions to science, but he's definitely a dirty Dick Donnie. So he's always playing in the mud. So they meet up, it's kind of like just some niceties and stuff. She goes to go do a couple other things in Africa, ends up like breaking her leg. So she doesn't get to go on these cool expeditions, but she still like muscles it out to go on like a tour to see gorillas, And long story short, it goes back to America. A couple years later, Louis Leakey's doing presentation. She comes around, sees him. They start talking. Maybe more than talking. I'm not making a supposition one way or the other.
Right.
But I do know that she made enough of an impression that he offered her the spot working in Rwanda as the second Jane Goodall, essentially, because he was having some success with Jane's undertakings. She'd been very successful. He was happy with the results, but he's time to move on to gorillas.
Where does this fall in terms of how long Jane Goodall's been doing it?
Jane Goodall's been doing this for about 2.5, 3 years.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
So obviously Dian Fossey, thinking of this like beautiful, inspiring woman living in the jungle, undertaking this cool thing, is wildly inspired.
Okay.
And she's like, yes, I want to do that. Leakey does some shit to like vet her, like things like, hey, you got to get your like pancreas removed.
What?
Or maybe not pancreas. Yeah, pancreas. It's like you got to get your pancreas removed because pancreatitis is very, very common in the jungles, and there are certain diseases that'll exacerbate it. So,
interesting.
There won't be medical facilities in the area, so you're going to need to just do that before we can send you out.
Okay.
So she's like, okay, and fucking gets her pancreas
Just
removed.
Gets elective pancreas.
Yeah, and he's like,
removal
well, you
surgery.
didn't really have to do that, but it's good to know you're dedicated.
So you're saying that she got her pancreas removed, elective pancreas removal surgery.
Yeah.
But she didn't blow him?
Hey, I'm not making any suppositions here.
Yeah,
but I would
nor
say
am
that,
I, but I'm saying in the list of what to do to get a job. And I'm a heterosexual man.
And again, all the respect in the world, if that were to be something that happened, good on you.
If it's my dream job, and here's the list: give me a beach or remove your pancreas, you're getting the beach.
What about both?
If it's my dream job and it's give me a beach and remove your pancreas, and then you got the job, I'll do both.
But it would seem that somebody dedicated enough to get a body part removed for this job might take a shot in the mouth. Who knows? But that's neither here nor there. What is here or there is that she took the job and got sent out to Rwanda to study mountain gorillas.
Okay.
She stopped by Jane Goodall's site in Gombe, and Jane Goodall told her like a few things. Like they were friends. They at least made friends in this week that she was hanging out.
Okay.
Like, this is how I do my notes. This is how I approach. It took me this long to get close to the chimpanzees. She said, I gave them bananas, and Dian Fossey was immediately like aghast. Like, that seems so against the scientific
Shouldn't
method.
do that.
Like, I was like, because this bitch been to college. So she's like, I know science, stupid Jane Goodall. But so that like bothered her, but everything else seems, very cool.
Right.
She goes, okay. And she goes and she sets up camp in Rwanda and does her thing. It takes like 2 years for her to be able to do what Jane Goodall did with the chimpanzees without giving them food.
Right.
But bit by
She
bit.
just gave them banana powder.
Yeah, it's just, I got cocaine. Come on, buddy. Come on. But little by little, she just becomes a fixture until eventually she's naturally just one of this gorilla tribe.
Okay.
And dude, in the mountains, it's super wet, super misty.
Yeah.
She is constantly suffering from different forms of like malaria, or she's got like some infection, or because she's constantly wet. Hey,
even without Louis being there, huh?
Yeah, gross. But yeah, she's
That
just
is
like
gross.
It's constantly damp there, but she's doing her.
Yeah, it's a fucking
research.
rainforest.
One thing that was happening in this area of Rwanda that was not happening as much in the Gombe area is poaching.
Okay.
So there is a strong culture of poaching, bush meat.
Well, yeah, she's not in a reserve either.
Yeah, she's
not in a
in
protected
just
area.
the fucking
She's
jungle.
just in the fucking Congo.
It's Rwanda.
Is that not?
They're very adjacent.
Yeah, the Congo goes
Yeah.
into Rwanda.
Yeah.
Now I have to look it up because I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure it does.
Yeah, but she's in a place that is known for being a hotspot of poaching, body part tourism. There's a
like the monkey hand,
exactly. Like there was
monkey paws.
a trade in the paws and heads of gorillas being used for ashtrays.
Jesus.
And other things like that, like genitals used for like black magic rites and shit. There's like witchcraft in the area, stuff like this.
Yeah, the Congo, by the way, does not expand into Rwanda.
Well, there we go.
So I was wrong.
In any case, Dian Fossey doesn't see this so much as like it's driving me away sort of a thing, as a, well, nobody's here to protect these
like
amazing animals.
Call to action.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever happenstance has brought her here now, and she is a dedicated researcher and scientist. Like, she's not like fucking around. She'll have research assistants. She's submitting information. She's finding out things about gorillas and their social groups and their norms and their activities.
Okay.
And writing reports. She wrote a book called Gorillas in the Mist, which got turned into a movie with Sigourney Weaver.
By the way,
cool movie, by the way.
The forest in Rwanda is called the, I'm not going to pronounce this right, but the Nyungwe Forest.
Cool.
By far the oldest and largest rainforest in Rwanda. Well, in Rwanda, that's not a very big country. But
so there are multiple instances in Dian Fossey's life with the gorillas that are worth examining. One is definitely when she started clashing with the tourism board of Rwanda. And specifically one of the elected officials that dealt with the tourism board.
Were they complicit with what was going on with the poaching?
Yes.
Is that the reason why?
Yeah, they were complicit for several reasons. One, because the culture of poaching is just so prevalent in the area that the people, like, their fucking families and shit would survive off of like hunting, in protected areas,
right?
Or selling souvenirs from protected animals. It's just a very, very common thing. The idea of...
Were the gorillas protected at this point?
They were protected nationally as like an endangered species, since they had already entered the endangered species area.
Yeah.
Right? But like, this area of Rwanda had been doing this for forever. This was... To them, the idea that you would even put like an illegal stamp on it was fucking offensive.
And there's probably a lot of, especially in the jungle, there's probably a lot of isolated villages and stuff like that. You can't just change a culture like that.
Yeah, not to mention all the political turmoil and upheaval, various civil wars, things like that, all over the fucking place. It's like, you're going to take your food where you can get it. You're going to get your money where you can.
This was in the 60s?
Yes, at this point, we're going into 1960.
Probably later in the 60s? Either way, Rwanda.
Going into like 1969.
Yeah, so Rwanda's got a lot of political upheaval at this point in time. And
so where her clashes with this tourism board.
And most of those people in those villages could give a fuck less about some
give a shit.
designation on a government document that gorillas are protected. They don't, if they even know, they don't give a fuck.
Right. And there is, I'll say something about that in a little bit. So when she starts clashing with this tourism board, it's because they bring her to orphaned gorillas, and they're like, "Hey, can you take care of them? These gorillas are sick." And she's like, "Yeah, absolutely. They're sick. How the fuck? How am I going to take care of them?"
Parents
and she's like, where did you get them?" And it's like, "Oh, okay." The thing with the trade for young gorillas, especially orphaned gorillas, is that in order to take a gorilla from a gorilla tribe, you got to kill a bunch of them, because they don't let you do that.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just take a fucking baby gorilla.
No, I'll bet you can't.
You can't. You have to...
without getting your arms ripped off.
Essentially, you have to kill, like, the whole family.
Fuck.
Yeah, it's a brutal, brutal practice. You have to kill, like, 6 gorillas to get one baby gorilla.
Oh, my God.
And so, her finding out that that's what was going on, and that these gorillas are going to be shipped to, I think, a zoo in Spain.
Some bullshit zoo where they're going to live in captivity forever.
Exactly.
Because some fucking humans came through and wiped out the whole tribe. That's crazy.
So she refuses to give them back. She's
What's a group of gorillas called?
Family.
Is it a family of gorillas?
Yeah, I would say just family. I'm not entirely sure.
I'll look it up. You keep going.
God, I should have looked that up in my fucking... I should know that shit. But she refuses to give them back, right? And the head of the Board of Tourism comes to her and she says, "Hey, you don't give us..."
So she's like, you're not sending them anywhere.
She's
it's
like,
a
no.
troop. A troop of gorillas.
So she's like, "No, fuck yourself. You can't have them. Go away." And she is a lone woman researching apes in the jungle.
A lone young white woman.
Yeah, that's telling a government official representing a rather brutal country at this time, with, again, a lot of upheaval, a lot of violence, that has soldiers at his beck and call. She's like, "No, fuck you. You can't have them." He comes to her and he says, "Well, if I don't get those 2, we're going to have to get some more." So she's stuck in a rough position and ends up having to give the 2 baby gorillas up, because what do you do there?
What a shitty threat.
That sucks, right? That sucks.
What a so the veiled threat there is just
Yeah, it's like, "Hey man, you can save these 2, but you're gonna take 14 more out of the world to do this."
God.
This is the gestational egg of where Dian Fossey starts to turn a little bit
radicalized,
right? Aside from the fact that she did at a certain point get abducted by like rebels during the Civil War and sexually assaulted.
Oh wow!
Until she like convinced them to let her like talk to an embassy and got them all arrested.
Holy shit!
Yeah, she was going through some shit. The first 5 years of her time in Rwanda were extremely aggressively difficult, and it changed her because the magical Jane Goodall experience is not what she's experiencing at all.
She's like, I could still have my pancreas and just be riding horses.
Right? So, National Geographic is funding her. Louis Leakey's still funding her. They send a photographer out to be with her.
I feel like I'd be writing letters like, do you know what the fuck's going on out
She
here?
is, and she is. She's starting foundations. Yeah. She's getting funding.
Good.
In my research, the consensus about Dian Fossey that a lot of people seem to have was that she was sort of a far right-wing, militant, crazy kind of racist that didn't like African people.
Really?
Right?
Well, if you've been abducted and raped by a bunch of them.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah, exactly.
It might change your concept.
That's where that kind of comes in. But at the same time,
I would still say maybe racism isn't the route. I mean, that's just a group of fucking
she never
dudes.
exhibited any actual like racism per se. That's what I'm saying. Like in the research, she's vilified as this sort of crazy lady in the jungle. But just these few instances that you hear me
would be enough to radicalize
that
most
kind
people.
of is a radicalizing thing in general.
Yeah.
And she's already there with the funding. And it's not as though she just stays in the jungle and is just fucking, I'm crazy.
Yeah, I defy anyone who sort of classify her as that to go through those
there's the
experiences and come out the other end like, nah.
I listened to like one podcast. I watched it on YouTube. I can't remember who they are, but I'd call them out because I thought it was bullshit. Where one of the hosts said that she did more harm than good by being there because it like would enraged the poachers to a point of actually targeting the guerrillas in her area, which was true. But he like was just like blanket, just like she just did bad. It was just bad. I say, go fuck yourself. Like, like she was someplace where bad things were happening and was trying to like attempt something good here.
Anybody can fucking armchair quarterback 40 years later, 50 years later. It's shit.
But it's more than just like, because the way she's presented and all these different things is that she's this crazy lady in the jungle. Just now she's like got a gun and she's like, get away from my gorillas, but she's not doing that at all. She goes back to the United States.
Johnson?
Yeah, old Mrs. Gorillas. She goes back to the United States and gets a doctorate. She becomes an adjunct professor. She does multiple publicity tours. She gets exposés in National Geographic. Like she's raising funding. She starts the Dian Fossey Foundation. All of these things. But then also coming back all the time because she lives in that area now.
Okay.
But only as like a tourist, right? So she has to apply for a new tourist visa every 2 months.
Right.
She drives like 9 hours to get her visa filled in every couple of months.
Wow.
And then comes back and fucking stays in this wet cabin with no power and smokes 3 packs of cigarettes a day and drinks a lot of whiskey. She's not having a great time. This photographer for National Geographic goes out there and is witness to the 2 baby gorillas situation. They start a romance there. Even though he's married, it becomes a very difficult thing because they spend like 2 years together and she's quite happy. And then he breaks it off because he's fucking married.
Oh my God.
And goes back to the States. So she's left again as kind of a
poor Dian Fossey.
Yeah, she's not having a great time. In the meantime.
Okay. Thinking about her going back to the States and coming back to Rwanda and having to travel to get her, her visa paperwork done every few months or whatever. It almost and then because your baseline place where you're hanging out,
the 2 young gorillas that she named Coco and Pucker, that whole situation happened in 1978.
Okay, but so I'm thinking about it and like like sort of the end goal is this this little cabin in this damp rainforest with no power in a place where she is obviously gone through some pretty significant fucking life-altering shit. The psychology behind that is like staggering to understand.
Yeah.
Like you'd have to imagine she goes back to the States and gets her doctorate and does this and all, and it's like
in Gary Paulson's Hatchet when he's looking at the rows of food in the grocery store.
And I get having a passion for doing this work and being around these animals and all that stuff. But I mean, I feel like even the most dedicated person, even the most passionate person, like there's a breaking point. There's a tipping point. And so
there's two schools on that. There's either
and also just knowing that she's just sitting in this cabin fucking slugging whiskey and ripping cigs is like, obviously there's some trauma she's dealing with
exactly.
being back in this cabin. So like,
there's the thing though,
it's so weird to think
that
about.
breaking point. You can either take that breaking point and be like, I can't do this anymore. Somebody's got to take over. I'm fucking off. Or if you ever go back to the States, the guilt you feel of abandoning the only family you've now known for like 10 plus years to whatever their fate is without trying to join them. Like there's the two sides of that, you know. That breaking point will either drive you away from or have you embrace the cause more.
Yeah.
You know, the radicalizing goes both ways.
Yeah, I just, like I said, that's got to be, I would love to, obviously I'll never be able to, but I would love to just be able to get in her head for a second and just know like what the drive to sort of
it's just
be in this very traumatic place.
They call her the gorilla woman. Like that was something that like was tagged to her by American media and stuff. Because again, she went on like the Johnny Carson show.
That sounds like a Rwandan poacher's nickname.
Right. Well, she was called something.
The gorilla woman.
She was called something else in like Rwandan that meant woman who lives alone in the jungle without a man.
Typical.
Typical. But she would go back to the States and do tours and publicity things and presentations. And she went on like fucking Johnny Carson and shit.
Oh, I thought you said Arsenio.
No, she went on the Johnny Carson show. Okay. Like she was known. You know, she was a public figure in general. But then back in
Arsenio
Rwanda,
wasn't around yet.
Back in Rwanda, she's getting a little more militant because the escalating, varying political strife plus poaching is ramping up. You know. So she's got a gun. She's in the jungle. She has research assistants that come out, but they start to get a little scared of her. They're like, well, she's way more into the anti-poaching angle and conservationism than she is in the research that she's here to do.
Well, I mean, how could you really drown yourself in the research if every time you turn around, these fucking gorillas that you're researching are being fucking murdered and having their hands and feet and heads chopped off?
Her big breaking point comes in 1977 when her favorite gorilla was a silverback named Digit, who was missing a finger. That's why she named him Digit. Was killed by poachers. As the Century of Study Group 4, that was the family, the troop that he was in, he defended the group against 6 poachers and their dogs who ran across the gorilla study group while checking for antelope trap lines.
Okay.
Right? So Digit took 5 spear wounds in self-defense and managed to kill one of the poacher's dogs.
Oh my God.
And he allowed the other 13 members of his group to escape doing that. So it's this epic fucking battle.
Yeah, fucking army of one just taking out all these fucking...
Yeah, and then when he went down, he was decapitated and his hands were cut off.
Yeah.
And one of the researchers tells the story of telling Dian Fossey when he found the body and her coming out and her just like petting his fur. Just fucking emotionless. Just like
Jesus. Not crying, nothing.
Not crying, just petting his fur. You know, and this was like this was her favorite for 10 years. Like someone she considered like a family.
So she
member.
just broke at that point.
Yeah, she subsequently created the Digit Fund that's now known as the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund International. But this really did fuck her up, and she switched into a different gear. Now that Gorilla Woman moniker becomes something very similar to the Batman moniker.
Well, and you have to, so, most people have or have had at some point, a pet in their lives that they fucking love. Yeah. Like, this is the equivalent of that, except for...
If you're not sympathetic to this, imagine if you're fucking... Somebody came into your yard and killed your dog with a machete.
Yeah. Well, by the way, after your dog went through this whole ordeal to like protect
your
whole family,
like the dog got your family to go away,
and then somebody comes back later and fucking chops his head and paws off.
Yeah, for ashtrays. That's what those are for.
Oh God.
Yeah,
yeah. An ashtray you said you'd buy.
Yeah. So, well, I would, but only from a secondhand store.
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't buy it from a poacher.
Never. I would look at it with the most horrified expression on my face if I ever saw any sort of primate paw.
I like spooky stuff. I don't
ashtray. Yeah, that thing's cursed.
Yeah, I'll take a curse. I've got a haunted painting in the studio right now.
You think it's haunted? I don't think it's haunted.
Yeah, well, okay. You're afraid of curses. Anyway,
I'm not, but that feels like playing with fire.
So Dian that switches into an overdrive of activism at this point. She hires mercenaries to patrol the area.
That's fucking wild.
She's out patrolling with a gun. More of her gorillas start getting killed. Like one that she called Uncle Bert, like ends up getting shot while defending other gorillas. She starts capturing poachers, torturing them,
Holy shit.
whipping their genitals with stinging nettles and shit.
What?
Like, burning their fucking feet. like she starts going hard. At one point, she kidnaps the son of one of the poachers, like a 7-year-old boy.
Oh no.
And holds him as a hostage.
Okay.
To negotiate, like, hey,
none of the
don't
torture
fucking
stuff?
No, it doesn't torture the kid.
Good.
No, I want to point out she doesn't kill any of these guys. She does not.
Well,
kill
that's where she
anyone.
fucked up.
It is where she fucked up, frankly. If she's gonna go that hard, go that hard.
Go if you're gonna, if you're gonna do it, do it.
But yeah, she holds this kid as a hostage until she can negotiate with his dad for them to not poach on her mountains.
Yeah.
Shit gets hard. Like, she sets fire to villages. She's running through the jungle in a fucking Halloween mask, like a booger mask. Like, popping up at fires and shit and screaming and scaring the shit out of people. She's going fucking nuts.
She just completely cracked.
She completely cracks, but in a complete, like I said, like a Batman way. She's like no longer even lightly observing any of the rules or laws of the land. And this is where a lot of people critique
Which,
her.
like I said, if you're gonna do it, just fucking
go for
murder
it.
them.
Yeah, exactly. But she's not murdering them.
There's
That's the
warthogs
thing.
and shit in the jungle.
There
they'll take those
are
bodies out.
several claims that the mercenary she hired did end up taking a few people out.
Okay.
But there's no direct line to her doing it. Though I wouldn't be surprised.
It sounds like that's the only step she's missing.
Yeah, and in this, she's losing funding. Research students are fucking leaving her behind. At one point, she's shooting above like tourists that come in, and the tourist trade is huge for like the Leakey Foundation.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, these are Louis Leakey's people that he's sending to check it out, and they get too close to the gorillas.
Which, I mean,
she starts fucking popping off her pistol.
But well, first of all, if they're part of Louis Leakey's foundation, then one, that's probably pretty like indispensable funding.
Yeah.
Going toward your whole thing. Two, the people who are there to be reverent. And
at this point, she's drunk most of the time.
Three, if they're getting too close to the gorillas,
like
if they're that close to the gorillas and you're popping off a firearm, you're scaring the fucking gorillas as much as you are the people.
She allegedly beat some poachers' testicles with stinging nettles. In a letter to a friend,
that's just funny.
In a letter to a friend, she wrote, "We stripped him and spread-eagled him and lashed the holy blue sweat out of him with nettle stalks." Like,
the holy blue sweat.
The holy blue sweat. I don't know what that means.
That's not something you think of someone from San Francisco saying.
Fair enough.
That's something you think of someone from, I don't know.
Dude, like,
Bumblescum, West Virginia.
National Geographic editor Mary Smith says that on visits to the United States, Fossey would load up on firecrackers and like cheap toys and magic tricks and shit as a way of keeping like to her methodology of scaring
the villagers,
the local villagers and shit into fucking off.
Yeah.
There's also like this legend that she practiced black magic that she was using as this sort of
which probably came from the villagers.
Like we said, writing her own legend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Jane Goodall writes the legend of like, I'm just a wide-eyed, starry-eyed girl that loves animals. Dian Fossey's like, I will curse your soul. Stay away from my fucking monkeys.
Oh my god.
So on December 27th, 1985, Fossey was discovered murdered in the bedroom of her cabin. She had been macheted in the face.
Ooh.
Yeah, she got a good macheting in. There is some legitimate commentary around who killed her. Most people would probably agree it's the poachers, but there is
at the behest of.
Could be the head of the Board of Tourism.
Mm-hmm.
There's also something where she had human hair in her hand that did not match a black African person. But it also was a similar color to hers. So when she got the fucking machete hack in the head and the face, maybe she reached for her head and reached her own hair. But there's some discussion and controversy about that.
Wow.
But in any case, she got murdered brutally.
That is brutal. I can't imagine fucking killing someone with a machete.
When I was a kid, because this is in the movie Gorillas in the Mist, which I recommend everyone watch. Cool flick. Sigourney Weaver's so fucking good in
that movie. Don't they cut her head off?
In that movie, they don't specify. What they do is they do the classic kind of like show the machete, and then cut.
Okay.
Right? I had always assumed as a kid, it just got into my head that they had cut off her head and hands.
I thought they did cut her head off. Maybe I'm just misremembering.
My memory as a kid was that they cut off her head and hands like they did with the gorillas. And I always thought that was so romantic. Like, what a fucking... like, I know it's morbid, but, like, what a
brutal.
Perfect fucking, like, end cap to that, though.
Uh,
In any case, she was buried.
Jesus.
She was buried in the same place that the gorillas were buried.
okay.
And her foundation has become one of the most successful animal conservation programs in the history of the world.
Really?
The mountain gorillas, as opposed to, unfortunately, the chimpanzees that Jane Goodall studied, or the orangutans in Borneo, the mountain gorillas in Rwanda are one of the only types of endangered animal in that area making a huge comeback.
Okay.
Yeah, their numbers are on the rise consistently.
Good.
And it is in no small part because Dian Fossey brought attention to the area and a lot of funding and a big foundation.
You know what they say? No press is bad press.
Right? Hey, no business like show business. Sometimes you got to get the hack.
Jesus.
And I just love putting those two characters together because it's like
very diametrically opposed.
Completely,
in terms
like
of
I've got Jane Goodall on this side here. I contemplate constantly getting Dian Fossey over here.
I think that would be rad.
I think I'm gonna have to.
I think you should do it. After this, you should do it.
I think I will. Actually. I've been thinking about it. I was either gonna be her or Jackie Chan. So
you got plenty of body space for Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan will be my whole back.
Get Jackie Chan on.
It's like Drew just did it. And before I even said it, he's like back, like a whole back.
Get Jackie Chan on your right.
I'm just gonna get
your right ankle.
What?
It's the ankle he broke in Rumble in the Bronx.
Wow, that's good.
Jumping from.
I would kind of like to get the entire poster of Legend of Drunken Master on my back, though.
How many movies do you think have a hovercraft in them?
Well, let's see. There's Rumble in the Bronx.
That's the only one I can think of.
There's...
What the fuck happened to hovercrafts?
That's a good question. Maybe people just got sick of them. They're like,
what a cool method of transportation.
You ever been on one?
No.
I have.
Have you really? Where?
I was in Michigan. It was at the McMath-Holbert Solar Observatory that I used to volunteer at during the summer when I was a kid. They had a hovercraft. It was small. It was only probably about the size of like a Hyundai. And
okay. Well, because the one on Rumble in the Bronx was giant,
fucking huge. But I got to ride that, and they also had the hovercraft.
That's one of the field trips we talked about doing.
Oh shit, the one in Jacksonville.
It's not in Jacksonville. It's in Green Cove, I want to say.
Yeah, let's go check it out.
That they started building, and then it's just sitting in like a ship graveyard.
That's like
now.
massive, though, right? It's way
giant.
bigger than the Rumble in the Bronx.
It's like the one in Rumble in the Bronx. It's giant.
Shit. But yeah, that solar observatory that I was just talking about actually
we need to do that and
is
put it on the
recently
Patreon.
getting sold. If we ever make it up to Michigan, we should check that shit out. The place is cool as fuck. Anyhow, okay, so that's 2 of the 3 Trimates.
Okay.
Right? Because the third one is actually quite a nice little story. So the third of the Trimates was a lady named, or is still, okay, because 2 of the 3 are still alive. Dian Fossey passed brutally, but
right.
Jane Goodall and Biruté Marija Filomena Galdikas, or just simply Biruté Galdikas.
That's a mouthful.
It was a Lithuanian-Canadian anthropologist, primatologist, conservationist, ethologist.
Yeah. Shout out to our Lithuanian listeners.
And author.
Which we have had.
Yeah, she is currently a professor at the Simon Fraser University.
Right, we have Lithuania.
In the field of primatology, Galdikas is recognized as a leading authority on orangutans. Prior to her field study of orangutans, scientists knew little about the species. In the field of studying the orangutan, in Indonesia and Borneo is where you usually find them.
Yeah, the jungles of Borneo.
The jungles of Borneo. Orangutan in...
A long way from Lithuania. Holy shit.
Orangutan in the Dayak dialect of the people in Borneo means man of the forest. Right?
You know where Lithuania is located on the map, right?
Yeah.
It's like next to Russia. It's like above Belarus.
Yeah, so Galdikas was born on the 10th of May in 1946 in Wiesbaden, West Germany.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay,
1946 in West Germany.
Okay.
Her parents...
Yeah, I think they share a border there too, right? Belarus.
Her parents were Lithuanian refugees fleeing the Soviet occupation of the Baltic states following World War II.
Okay.
Right? So when Galdikas was 2 years old, the family moved to Canada. It was in 1948. And her father signed a contract to work in copper mining in Quebec. As a child, Biruté was, adventurous.
Sounds like a terrible job.
Well-read. She was Canadian...
No, copper mining.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's tough, but I mean, like, her father traditionally would just be like a contractor or, hardworking in general. That was just where it started.
Lithuanian man.
Right, yeah, exactly. There's a rigmarole about how she was inspired by, like, Curious George when she was a kid, which I think is a very simple, like, spin off of the
Who
Jane
wasn't?
Goodall, like I love Tarzan
Yeah.
so much,
That's like if I
it's all just branding.
yeah,
at
if
this
I
point.
started working in Alaska with grizzlies, I could go back and be like, yeah, I used
Right.
to read the Berenstain Bears when I was a kid, a whole bunch.
Yeah, like, Jane Goodall was like, I love Tarzan. Biruté Galdikas is like, I loved Curious George. Yes, Dian Fossey. She was a big fan of
Jack Daniels.
A big fan of. Yeah, I was gonna say I was trying to think of like a violent book. I was a big fan of In Cold Blood,
American History
yeah.
X.
Yeah, right.
I think so. I don't necessarily think these things weren't true. I think when you reflect back on your life, if things had gone differently for Jane Goodall or Biruté, right, those things would be a non-factor in their youth.
Yeah, exactly.
But because they ended up working as
then it becomes this
primatologists,
sort of like
then you start reflecting back on your life, and you're like, oh, well,
Yeah.
I did.
if you look at
read
my
Tarzan,
life,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, if I'm if I become a politician in 2 years, nobody's gonna give a fuck that I love Jane Goodall. But if I become a primatologist,
Right.
then that's gonna be all of a sudden part of the
and
legend.
even and even you reflecting back on your life, you look at that and you go, okay, like if you make it big in podcasting and you write a biography about yourself and how much you really liked Howard Stern in the 90s.
Yeah, which I honestly was never a fan.
Same.
So in 1966, Galdikas earned a bachelor's degree in psychology and zoology by UCLA and UBC, the University of British Columbia, if nobody knows that.
Upright Brigade Citizens?
The upper She got married and got her master's degree in anthropology in 1969. During her graduate studies at UCLA, Galdikas met paleoanthropologist Louis Leakey.
Okay.
And she proposed a plan to him
To have sex.
to get down and dirty and fuck monkey style. No, she proposed a plan to him aimed at studying orangutans in their
hang
natural
from a
habitat.
tree branch, baby.
She was inspired by Jane Goodall and Dian Fossey, who she'd been
Okay, really?
following very closely. So when she met Louis Leakey,
She was already
like,
tracking
She
these
was like,
ladies.
"Yo, I am into this shit."
What year was that?
This is in 1969.
Okay.
1969. Okay, off of the
So,
Stooges,
oh my God.
Iggy and the Stooges album, self-titled.
The way you worded that is like they named the album self-titled.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I did say it like that.
So just to double back, Jane Goodall, 62 is when she started?
Yeah.
Fossey, like a year or two after that.
Yeah, exactly. Like
2 years,
65,
2 years,
66.
Okay.
So,
okay.
So yeah, in 1970 is when she starts doing this plan.
When
after.
she heads out.
Yeah, exactly. It's 71 at age 25 when Galdikas and her then husband, a photographer named Rod Brindamore,
Mm-hmm.
went to Tanjung Puting Reserve in Indonesian Borneo.
Mm.
But yeah, so she proposed this plan aimed at studying orangutans, and it was just very simply like, listen, you got chimpanzees, you got gorillas, you don't have an
What's the next
orangutan
one?
lady, and they're fucking cool, and nobody knows shit about them.
They're so floppy.
They're
fun.
amazing. They're amazing.
They're little floppy guys.
And to me,
I've met some orangutans. They're cool.
I picture like chimpanzees as these balls of like energy and verve and
Mhm.
action and kinetic motion, and gorillas are a little more of like
They're real chill.
the peaceful hangout guys.
Yeah.
They've got some like to them, but they're like they're much
if you get them
more
started, but they're like sit in the grass
They're-
and just look off into the
they're
distance.
very, very like Guardian-esque kind
Yeah,
of just like
yeah.
noble
Yeah.
creatures. And then you look at orangutans, and to me, they're like the wise fucking like wizard creatures of the jungle.
I think
you
they're
know?
just they're so cool. They're just like I said, they're just big old floppies.
Have you ever
like
looked?
big old
have you ever
long
fucking
arms.
looked into an orangutan's eyes?
Yes.
They know. They fucking know the shit. Like when you look, because you look into one of their eyes, they'll notice you made eye contact, and they'll like lean in and look directly into your fucking eyes. Like it's not. There's no like dismissal.
Right.
You do it with a gorilla, they'll take it as a challenge. A chimpanzee, probably the same way.
A chimpanzee, I feel like, would look at you and be like, "Oh,
Yeah,
there's
there's
something else going on over there."
Whatever.
Yeah.
You know, because they're fucking kind of dickheads. But you know, gorillas don't like that shit, and they'll get huffy. But if you
Yeah.
like, I've looked into an orangutan's
Well,
eyes.
not if you're a petite woman, but I think.
I mean,
if you,
it's
like,
the same all over. If they
Yeah.
see you as like a primate like them, they'll get a little huffy. They might not attack you, but like that look is
a challenge.
It's a challenge,
Yeah.
right? So but an orangutan doesn't do that.
Yeah.
They see that.
That's why you don't look into, I don't know if you've ever met any wolves. Don't look directly into their eyes.
Take it as a challenge. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that's why if your dog's being a dick, you fucking stare him down. Right? But
that's true.
Yeah, with an orangutan, they'll just look you right back in the fucking eyes and stare at it.
They're like, what's happening?
Yeah, and they'll be like, you see this? I see you.
Staring contest.
It's a very wise, weird, mystical thing. I feel like there's more to orangutans than there is.
There's just
than we know.
Something. I know I keep calling them floppy. There's just something almost like slow motion about them, like the way they're just very flowy.
Big old sloth monkeys.
Yeah, they're really flowy. Mm-hmm. Like if you ever see them like doing like
it's the long straight hair and just like it's like they're wearing.
What's the bars? The
like the uneven bars, parallel bars.
Yeah, if you ever see them doing the parallel,
the monkey bars, bro.
Monkey bars, yeah.
Yeah, they're just slow, methodical.
The way
they're
they
not
do it,
in a hurry.
It's so like, vroom, it's like real flowy.
Yeah, it's their hair too. Is that like long, whoa.
Where chimpanzees are like a lot more aggressive. With
exactly. And well, the thing with the orangutan is that they evoke so much strength. Like you can tell that's an unbelievably strong.
Yeah, I've had one grab my arm and I'm like, okay, buddy.
Whoa!
Don't twist, please.
But there's also just this like.
But he just wanted to.
It's just this level of like understanding to them that's crazy, and you can't really know that until you experience it.
And this orangutan just like grabbed my arm and just like because there were probably about 5 of us around. Right?
What were you doing there?
This was at a. I'm not going to talk about it because it's a well-known place that's quite controversial. I did not opt to go there. I was tasked with going there for a specific thing. But it sounds really vague. You know that I used to date a behaviorist who worked with like big cats and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So this was implemented in this place was implemented in a quite popular docuseries during COVID, that got popular during COVID.
That's an interesting Patrick lore. Okay.
Yeah. I've been to one of the places.
Huh.
One of the more popular places. I'll tell you guys off mic.
Okay. All right.
But so we got to hang out behind the scenes with a lot of these animals, and this orangutan, like he just wanted to hang out, but he like just he just reached out and grabbed my arm and was just like, just held it. And he was like kind of looking at everybody, and everybody's having conversations. Everybody's looking at him and like, oh my God, you're so cute. And like, he was just dangling from one arm and holding my arm. Mm-hmm. And I think he had his feet on some people too. Yeah, he was just chilled there.
Cool.
But the grip strength was real. Like even with him just kind of like
they're every bit as strong as a chimpanzee. And
easily, yeah.
But it's a much more like a slower, more elegant, far less kinetic sort of
like I said, he's just a big old floppy boy, and I was like, I love you.
Yeah, which is like crazy because I always get this feeling like chimpanzees are dangerous, and I love them, and they are very fun and funny and great personalities. Mm-hmm. But they're very dangerous, and they can change their mind about you.
They seem very volatile.
A moment's notice.
Yeah, they seem volatile.
I feel like an orangutan. You ever see that video of the guy that's like messing with the orangutan, and he like the orangutan like quickly grabs him and tries to pull him through the bars.
That's like a slow motion pull.
Yeah, that orangutan's face doesn't change a little bit, but you can see like anger and like fucking just like a mean intent in it. Yeah. You know, there's something more elevated about this particular creature, but they're not.
Yeah, and then he gets the guy's leg against the bars, I think, and he grabs the leg between the bars, and the dude's screaming like, "Oh, that guy is petrified right now."
The fucking orangutan will snap him in two.
Yeah, he literally could have probably snapped his fucking femur.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. If he had like done like a
Jesus
force thing, he's just doing this slow vice like.
Yeah.
And that's because that orangutan didn't like him, you know, and that you can tell in his fucking face. There's something so human in general about, like, you just read the emotions on him. But in any case,
fucking crazy.
Nobody really knew dick about them because Borneo is pretty inaccessible, and orangutans specifically are pretty inaccessible. Like they live in treetops and deep jungle, and they live far away from people.
And probably avoid them.
They're creatures of legend. Yeah. Like the people of Borneo specifically call them men of the woods.
Yeah.
Because that's, to them, it's like, okay, those are humans-ish in a way.
Yeah.
But they're magic. And
enough so that we're just going to let them do...
fuck away from them.
We're going to let them do whatever mystical shit they're doing out there.
So at age 25 in 1971, Galdikas and her then husband arrived in Indonesian Borneo. Mm-hmm. Galdikas was the third of the Trimate trio. Mm-hmm. And before her studies... the orangutan was the least understood of the great apes. She went on to greatly expand scientific knowledge on behavior, habitat, and diet. In 1986, she and a colleague founded the Orangutan Foundation International, based in Los Angeles to help support orangutans around the world.
Mhm.
Her second husband, Pak Bohop, who was a Dayak rice farmer and tribal president,
Wow.
assisted in setting up sister organizations in Australia and Indonesia, the United Kingdom.
Okay.
So the story of Biruté Galdikas is pretty heartwarming.
Mm-hmm.
She moves to Borneo.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing the same thing, kind of, that Jane Goodall and Dian Fossey tried to implement, but there's not a whole lot of sneaking up on the orangutan.
Mm-hmm.
They know you're coming,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not afraid of you. So essentially, she was accepted immediately.
Really?
Yeah, like she found out where there were families. She got close. She was non-threatening. They understood that and was very quickly just like, here you go. So she studied them, found out that they have over 400 different kinds of food that they eat in the wild. They have complex family structures. They have humor. They have full comedy, even dramatic performances sometimes.
I can see it.
They make friends and make enemies. They're predominantly peaceful with occasional outbursts of violence depending on the situation.
Right.
But generally very fucking cool.
Yeah.
She, in fact,
I can't imagine just sitting in the woods and having an orangutan come up and like hand you a coconut.
Yeah,
be like,
exactly that kind of shit. Like,
I'd
hey,
be like, oh my God, you're my best friend.
Brought you some food too, and we're just gonna hang out and eat this.
Yeah, and just like flop down next to me and with his
Crazy.
coconut.
Yeah, so
like, we're buddies.
So Galdikas, ended up getting a divorce from her first husband, the photographer, after some of their early work because he wanted to leave. He's like, okay, we do this for a while, and then I'm more than just an orangutan guy. That's your path, not mine. So they end up splitting. She gets with this guy Pak Bohop, who is a villager,
Indonesian guy, yeah,
Indonesian guy named Pak, and they go through this whole thing. There's this cool story that I heard that I can't find verification for, but I like a lot. And sometimes print the legend. She had this knife that she had bought in an Indonesian village, right? That was just like a cool decorative, blade. Seemed old. It was neat.
The emphasis on that weird.
Cool.
It was just a cool decorative blade.
Yeah. Cool decorative blade. A very Shatner.
But
you and your crew, you'll be destroyed. But anyway, she had this cool knife. She falls in love with this villager who's like the village president. Fairly simple guy. I actually have a friend who has a similar story. She was a missionary and ended up falling in love with a villager and now lives in Thailand, I think, in a village. Actually, she might have moved back to the States. But they got 2 kids. Beautiful story. Yeah. So that's what Galdikas and Pak are doing. After they get married, she gives him this knife as like a wedding gift, and he's kind of like, what? And she gives it to him. He looks at it, and he finds out that this is like his family's ancestral blade.
What?
That had been stolen like
decades
before. Weird. It's this like crazy, faded, almost mystical thing. So like of the angel devil Jane Goodall, Dian Fossey thing, you get a whole different kind of mystical experience out of Galdikas going into Borneo. Because she meets these wise old fucking spirits of the forest. Yeah. She has this like faded sort of like cosmic thing like with this villager.
Like a weird Disney princess.
Exactly. It just becomes like that. She stays in Borneo for 40 years, continuously still, raising funding and doing all this kind of stuff. She met a little bit of controversy at a certain point because she would take in orphan orangutans. Which in the scientific community is like, you don't do that. No, you can put them in a research facility. She's like, no, they can come to my fucking house. Yeah. So she has a family of orangutans she lives with because of clear cutting or conflict or things like that. They end up
I'm not
orphaned.
upset about it at all.
No, they just live with her. Yeah. They live in my yard. They're my guys.
got a house here. This is where they live. Why am I going to send it to a scientific facility? You motherfuckers are the ones who clear cut the woods. Yeah. They can live in my house. Fuck you.
An outspoken advocate for orangutans and the preservation of their forest habitat, which is rapidly being destroyed. But yeah, she campaigns on their behalf constantly and raises orphan orangutans and has a whole family of them. And
she's still out there?
She's still out there.
Really?
She's still rocking it.
That's
that,
badass.
and she's an adjunct professor in British Columbia.
That's cool as shit. University of British Columbia.
She's been featured in Life, New York Times, Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, and
Geographic.
Twice on the cover of National Geographic. Her work has been acknowledged in television shows hosted by Steve Irwin,
who we love.
Yes.
We're just having a glaringly positive conversation about Steve Irwin the other day.
Yeah. So that's the Trimates.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that was what I wanted to talk about for my birthday.
Well, yeah. So I guess we never talked about this. We all have a topic we get to pick for our birthdays. So Drew's got one coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah, his is dicks. He wanted to talk about big dicks, boners, and
I guess
balls.
in like a month. Yours is in a month. Yours in a month and a half. When's your fucking birthday? Beginning of July, right? Yeah.
July 1st.
Yeah, a couple months. Month and a half.
Yeah,
So,
I fucking love those stories all together in like a cohesive. Did you ever see the movie The Hours?
No.
It's about 3 female authors. You got Virginia Woolf, Sylvia Plath, and somebody else. But it's like intercut into like, this is part of this woman's life, this is part of this woman's life, and they sort of wind together and they add meaning to each other. And
Okay.
they kind of. When I think of the story of these 3 ladies, like that's the way that it works in my head. You know, like you can't have Dian Fossey without Jane Goodall. You know, you can't have Jane Goodall without Louis Leakey, and you can't have Galdikas without all 3 of them.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's just fascinating
cool.
the way that all comes together.
Pretty fucking
You
cool. I want to know if Louis Leakey got to get some action with any of them.
Maybe he did. I don't know. He was well-known paleoanthropologist. He's popular.
In the 60s, you could get away with it.
He was doing some fucking science shit, so I don't know. Who cares?
No, I don't care.
Yeah.
I
hope they all fucked him.
Inquiring minds want to know.
I hope they all fucked him.
I hope they all fucked him consensually.
Yeah, I hope they were like, this is cool.
You know what? No, he had a wife. Maybe I don't hope that.
I hope she got in on it too. Whatever.
If she's into it. But yeah, I just, you know, maybe it's this podcast, but I tend to just look at everything through this just
There's
hazy gray cloud of.
There's a myopic lens that comes with
of human fuckery where it's like.
Because the thing that we really want to do.
I'll send you there.
The one thing we want to do with this podcast
for me too
is we want to try and pull back
and
some
Jane
of the layers.
Goodall's like,
you know?
aren't I about to do something for you by going and living in the goddamn fucking African savannah?
He's like, hey, we can get any broad to do that.
Yeah, Jesus.
No, I hope that she was telling the truth when she turned down his advances and it still worked out just fine. That would be cool. But if not, I hope that everything was fine.
The problem with that is
he is kind of a well-known creep. So.
The problem is that she's got nothing to gain by saying that she did, and potentially a lot to lose.
Possibly, yeah.
If she says that she did. So,
but again, this is
like,
all suppositionary.
Although I suppose something to lose too by saying that he even made a pass at her.
Yeah,
if she even brought it up. Then
I guess like that is a big sticking point for all 3 of these ladies that has come up many times. You know, in the research, a lot of people are like, well, what did they have to do? Any podcast you listen to
he
about
must have
this,
been just notorious fucking poon hound.
Well, he was a 1960s. He was the 1940s to 1960s, like big male scientist. He had a lot of money at his command. He has a lot of renown, a lot of respect. He was published in many, many journals. You know, and word got around. He was a little bit of a horn dog.
Jeez, come on, Leakey, be better.
Well, he ain't getting any better now. He's the one being archaeologized.
All right. Well, listen, if you like that episode.
If he was pretty horny before, now he is a boner. A leaky boner.
And on that final dick joke, if you like this episode, best way you can tell us is get on whatever you're listening to, give us 5 stars, leave us a review. The reviews are super important. Like 5 stars is cool. The reviews are fucking super important. Leave us a comment on Spotify if that's what you're listening on. Send us an email, deleteeverythingpodcast@gmail.com. If there's anything you want to talk about, if there's anything you want us to talk about, that's where to find us, and you'll get a quick response from us. And YouTube, if
YouTube is a place.
If somebody's listening to this on Spotify or whatever, and you catch a little snippet of it, and you're like, oh, what's that? And you don't have Spotify or what else? Audible or Apple Podcasts or any of those things. You can find us on.
We're flirp casting on the Blip Blops.
You can get us on YouTube for free.
You can hear us on Blongo, the new streaming app.
Blongo, baby, Blongo.
Yeah, and then if you want to see corresponding photos with any of this episode or any of our previous episodes, Instagram, you can follow us there. Shoot over there, give us a follow, check out all the videos and photos that we upload. And what else? Patreon if you want to just listen to us be crazy.
Yeah,
that's got about 30 episodes on it at this point, and
it's a bunch of madness and videos and a bunch of wacky stuff.
Yeah.
And we're just getting more and more all the time.
Yeah, so
I've got a cool idea I want to pitch.
That's patreon.com/deleteeverythingpodcast.
I got a cool idea I want to pitch to you guys after we wrap up about Patreon.
Okay, all right, hell yeah. Well, on that note, bye.
Bye.
here.